Hello, welcome back to our weekly witnessing tip. And this week we are following up on a question that we got. So sometimes people ask us to address a specific topic.
Right.
So this time the question was, how do you discern the difference between a false teacher and someone who follows a false teacher?
Okay, great question.
Yeah, and this was in regards to a witnessing tip that we did a few months ago on sharing or defending the truth.
Okay, yeah, and I talk a lot about the difference between defending and sharing the truth. So that's a really great question, and I think there's not an easy answer. First of all, I want to say that. And actually, this gets to our first pillar of our witnessing principles, see Mormons as victims, not enemies. That's more controversial than most people think. I think, first of all, some of our LDS friends don't like that pillar.
Right.
And after you think about it, it's understandable. I know we just did a recent campaign and more than one LDS member, chafed under that idea. And I understand that because I don't often like it when like an LDS person says, you don't have the fullness of the truth, or you have been deluded, and so forth. None of us likes to be called victims. So I understand that. But the reason we do that is so that Christians have the right mindset. But it's also controversial among Christians because they say, well, aren't they false prophets? Aren't they, don't we have to defend the truth? And yes, some are. But then the question is, how do we tell the difference, right? Is that the question?
That is the question, yeah. Yeah, how do we know when we're defending the truth and when we're sharing the truth?
And it's not a black and white line.
Right.
There is some gray area there. And I think the biggest hint that has helped me over the years, and that I will share with you, is that we cannot determine if a person is a false prophet by their position in the church or by their relationship with the corporation, with the church. I think the only way that we can determine where a person is by talking with them. And the reason, let me just explain this. Everybody who holds to a false teaching will immediately or in the beginning defend their false teaching. They don't know anything better.
Right.
And this includes our LDS friends, including many LDS bishops or local leaders and the like. But after we talk to them, this is where the distinction comes, how they react to the truth. And not their initial reaction, because again, the initial reaction when we first present the truth to them will probably be, at the very best, doubt, but probably more even resistance. But over a period of time, if we present the truth to a person, and then they become even more adamant about their beliefs, and they become more set in their ways, and they have heard the truth, but they don't even want to hear it, and then they continue to proclaim their false teaching. I say they have then identified themselves as a false prophet. But in the beginning, I think we make the assumption that everybody is following that truth through ignorance.
Right.
And I would look at St. Paul. When St. Paul went to a new city, what did he do? What was the first place he always went to?
The synagogue.
The synagogue.
Yeah.
He went to the synagogue, even though they were not believing in Jesus. He went to them, and only did he leave the synagogue, or at times was forced out of the synagogue, after he talked with them a while. They heard the truth, and then they rejected the truth. And that's when, in a sense, he said, okay, no longer am I sharing the truth, I'm defending the truth.
Yes, okay.
And if we would say, everybody who holds to a false teacher is a false prophet, we could never talk to anybody. Who could we talk to? Because everybody has a belief, even atheists. And if it's a false belief, we could never talk to anybody. We put them all in the category of a false prophet. And even St. Paul was in that category, right? And who would have expected him to become a Christian, right? And of course, Jesus did that directly on St. Paul. But I think for me, again, just to sum up, the only way that I can really tell the difference if a person is a follower who I want to share the truth with, or a false prophet, is after I talk with them and see how they are reacting to the truth I'm presenting to them. And that's why I say there's a gray area, because there's going to be a time when we're talking to somebody that they're still resisting, and then their resistance becomes quite blatant. In that gray area, we might be half sharing, half defending, but then finally we just say, well, we have to tell you the truth. We're defending the truth. It's not so much more seeing them as a victim. Now we're seeing them as a false prophet.
Yeah, and that was, I really appreciate that you said that, kind of how you wrap that conversation up then.
Yeah.
How do you exit that conversation then when you say, okay, I'm defending the truth and
Right.
this isn't necessarily going...
My goal there then is a little bit different. Instead of trying to win them,
Right.
I am just saying, I am standing up for the truth. Let me bear you my testimony,
Right.
Let me bear you my testimony. And I don't even want to really discuss it anymore with you. You know, I'm bearing my testimony and say thank you,
Yeah.
because our discussion is going nowhere.
Yeah, it's not arguing.
Right.
Yeah, but you're
Proclaiming the truth,
proclaiming the
defending
truth.
truth.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay.
Yeah, we love that when we get these follow-up questions. So if you have a topic that either you want us to revisit or something that we haven't addressed,
Right.
Share that with us. We're always looking for ways that we can equip Christians to proclaim the truth
Right.
and share those gospel seeds.
And by the way, Pastor John is getting back from vacation. He was in Utah and stuff. So he will start, you will start seeing him again on these witnessing tips.
He is still around.
He's still around. So yeah.
All right, well, have a great week.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.